This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Amy Jacobson here. Bruce Wolf sitting in for Dan Proft on what has turned out to be a very busy day news-wise. Of course, the Kavanaugh bombshell, and on Friday, bombshell news that Trump's former campaign manager of 5 months, Paul Manafort, is now cooperating with Mueller and the Russian probe. And a man who has been in Mueller's shoes trying to get agreements from witnesses is none other than Ken Starr, and we are honored to have him here on our program. Good morning, Mr. Starr. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much, Amy. Good to be with you.
Yeah, so what was the offer and the deal that Paul Manafort took?
It was to cooperate fully, and by virtue of that, he'll get a reduced sentence on the charges that were filed against him in Washington. Those are different charges than those he was convicted on last month in Alexandria. So Manafort was really in a very precarious, difficult situation. I predicted that he would, in fact, plead if he was guilty, and he did, in fact, plead to these crimes. And the significance of this is Bob Mueller now has, if it happens, the full cooperation of truthful testimony from Paul Manafort. And that's going to be so helpful in getting to the bottom of, was there Russian collusion? Thus far, there's been zero evidence of it, or was there not?
And here's the question. A lot of people were jumping for joy because they thought Manafort's going to flip on Trump. However, Andy McCarthy, you know Andy, of course, former federal prosecutor, writes for National Review and is on Fox. He has said and has written, he finds it hard to believe that Mueller sees Manafort as the key to making a case on Trump when Mueller's had Richard Gates, Manafort's partner, as a cooperator for 6 months, and you have to figure Gates knows whatever Manafort knows about collusion. Yet since Gates began cooperating with the special counsel, Mueller has filed the charges against Russians that do not implicate Trump and has transferred those cases to other Justice Department components. I know you don't want to speculate too much, but do you think there's Manafort's going to be flipping on Trump?
I think Andy McCarthy's analysis is spot on. Andy is almost always,
Right.
along with my former colleague Saul Weisenberg, who was on our team and was himself, as was Andy, a renowned federal prosecutor. Those two guys are almost always right. Nobody has a crystal ball, but it's really strong analysis for the reasons that Andy stated. So, yes, for whatever reason, and I think one thing that I think part of it is that people have not paid enough attention to the two indictments that Mueller did, in fact, bring against Russian individuals and Russian organizations for their skunk works in interfering with our election. Now, you read those two indictments, and guess what? There's not even a suggestion, not even a hint of collusion with the Trump campaign. In fact, to the contrary, one of the indictments has a very intriguing paragraph that just shows what the Russians were after was upsetting the election, upsetting the American people, getting us mad at one another. Because that one paragraph said on the very same day, these Russian thugs financed both a pro-Trump rally in New York and an anti-Trump rally in New York on the bloody same day. So the bad guys in this drama thus far are the Russians.
Now, a lot of people criticize Mueller. They say, this is an endless investigation, and it's not going in what its original raison d'etre was about. The same criticism was leveled at you.
Yes.
And you've written a book called Contempt. And, for example, there's this Starr prosecutor, Bruce Udolph, who told Slow Burn, a Slate podcast, that the Monica Lewinsky case should have been dead on arrival and it served no useful purpose. Your response to that?
Well, I like Bruce, but he's wrong. He was involved in the investigation and then left the investigation. He was the target of very vicious attacks from the Clinton White House. But I disagree, and frankly, everybody else on the team did, including people who were renowned federal prosecutors, two of whom had won. the Justice Department's highest award. But the facts are the facts, and what I think the book is trying to show about this particular point is that was that part of the investigation, the Lewinsky phase of the investigation, was authorized by the Attorney General of the United States. So if it's dead on arrival, then it should have been pronounced dead on arrival by the Attorney General appointed by Bill Clinton. But she couldn't, as a matter of honor, as a matter of ethics, as a matter of law, turn a blind eye to the President of the United States committing perjury and obstruction of justice.
Wow. So the book, I think, proves that Bill and Hillary Clinton weren't victims of so-called vast right-wing conspiracy. Didn't they play fast and loose with the law and with facts and think that they were above the law?
Thank you, Amy. Absolutely. One of the things that I think the book demonstrates, and what I've said is, I think any fair-minded person who reads the book will come away and say, I don't know whether the president should have been impeached or whatever, but they will conclude that there were very reasonable grounds to believe, quite apart from the Lewinsky case and what happened in impeachment, is that both Bill and Hillary were more likely than not guilty of crimes in the Arkansas phase of the investigation, as well as perjury on Hillary's part. But there's a difference between, and every prosecutor will say this, there's a difference between what I know and what I can prove. And that's a great protection to the American people. We don't want prosecutors going into court unless they know in advance they're going to be able to win that case, right? Or they should be able because they've got the evidence. In Hillary's case, we had missing documents and we had missing witnesses. And you just can't overcome that. So we seriously considered indicting Hillary, or I should say presenting the indictment to a grand jury in Little Rock, but we felt that we did not have enough evidence, especially because of missing witnesses. We did not have the full cooperation of Webb Hubbell. We thought we were going to get more out of full cooperation from Jim Guy Tucker, who is our source. Here's another echo for the present day. Governor Jim Guy Tucker was our Paul Manafort. We convicted him in trial number one. He was indicted under a separate indictment for other crimes, and then he ended up pleading guilty. We think he was truthful with us in cooperating with us. However, what he had simply, again, was not sufficient to go to prove that Bill and Hillary were committing crimes in terms of the financing of the Whitewater deal.
Circling back to Manafort, Alan Dershowitz, civil libertarian defense attorney, is always concerned about this, about guys who are looking for a deal, and that they have the pressure.
He said that he should have made a deal at the beginning.
Well, but
spared himself some time in jail.
But they have the pressure to compose, and so that he'll start making stuff up. I mean, what's your view on that?
Yeah, listen, I have the greatest respect for Alan. Alan looks at the world through the lens of a criminal defense lawyer and civil libertarian, as you said, Bruce. And I'll just say this. If the prosecutor is trying to get the witness here, Paul Manafort, to compose, then the prosecutor is a rogue, unethical prosecutor. And I don't think Bob Mueller is that. I think he's a truth guy. He's an honor guy. He's Semper Fi, a Marine Corps. Now, again, I've expressed concern about some of the people around Bob Mueller. But in terms of Mueller's judgment, I think he's going to give it his best honest shot, as opposed to, hey, let's see if we can get this guy to kind of frame the story and shape the narrative our way. What we used to say to witnesses is, hey, we can deal with the truth, whatever it is, whether it inculpates, exculpates, doesn't matter. We just want the truth. What we cannot deal with are lies.
And speaking of lies, the big news this morning is that Kavanaugh's alleged accuser has come forward and has, written a letter to Dianne Feinstein's office. Has now the FBI has it. They haven't moved on it yet. But what do you make of all of this? I mean, coming, on the 3 days before the Senate Judiciary Committee is supposed to take a vote.
Yeah, the process, of course, raises fundamental issues of fairness, to the process. Why was this not brought forward by Senator Feinstein? Why did the person not come forward? But here's my basic point. I believe Brett Kavanaugh, because I've known him for many, many years, going back to 1994. I worked alongside him. He is a person of great integrity. He adamantly denies that this ever happened. And so it's going to be, and so does the other person who apparently was involved in this alleged episode. Likewise, I know of no corroboration of it. So I believe Brett Kavanaugh because I think he's a man of great honor, and I think the process of bringing this forth at the 11th hour plus raises very serious questions of fairness to the process.
Can I just try to argue with Ken Starr? It would be an honor to actually do that. Your Honor, you should have been on the Supreme Court yourself. Here's the problem is, I read the story, and there are problems with the story because she doesn't remember where and when it happened. And usually with a traumatic incident like that, you would remember a detail like that. But on the other hand, there does seem to be a plausibility. She didn't claim rape. She said, this is what happened and nothing more. The two guys were stumbling drunk. It's possible they don't even remember the incident because they were so drunk. I mean, there's a possibility it's more likely than not that she's telling the truth, even though she may have an agenda and Feinstein screwed the pooch on this and all that.
She might have the wrong prep school boys.
But I mean, she probably could identify him. I mean, don't you think it's a possibility that it's more likely than not she's telling the truth?
Well, anything is possible, but given the fact that Brett I'm sorry, I should call him Judge Kavanaugh, has denied it. But the other thing is, look at, and I don't want to get into the merits and how you weigh it. I'm not a United States Senator, but here is an alleged episode from high school.
I know.
High school,
I know.
And now it is decades later with this exemplary career. Here, all these high school young women from his high school days who've come forward with this letter.
Well, Judge Starr,
65 of them. I like the letter.
But Judge Starr, you can always get people who weren't assaulted to testify to how good he is. We're talking about this particular incident. And I'm not saying I kind of agree. I agree with you. I mean, he was only 17 years old, but assuming
allegedly,
arguendo, as the lawyers say, that it's true. I mean,
it's a good word.
Well, there you go. I'm glad I taught you something right here.
He's been practicing that all weekend.
Right, all my legal Latin. No, here's the thing. I mean, you've got to look at the four corners of what happened right here, and there is a plausibility to her story. And of course, even assuming it's true, cut him a break because he's had an exemplary life after that. But that's different from the actual story itself. No,
you should be judged from college and on. High school discretion.
The story itself. I'm trying to get you to admit that the story is plausible.
Well, I'm not going to admit that. Yeah. And the reason I'm not going to admit it is that I love this man who has served with such integrity for so many years in so many different positions, tough positions. He did not ever bend the rules during my long experience with him of several years, always upright. And so he said it did not happen.
So you admit that you're biased, isn't it true, Judge Starr? You called him Brett.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely biased. I want to exercise one of my peremptory challenges, and you're off.
So how long have you two known each other, and how close are you? I mean, have you talked to him about this? Because this must be traumatic on his family and his daughters. I mean, I feel awful for them.
It's just absolutely horrible. 6 full FBI investigations. Many positions of honor and trust in the United States government, 6 over many years. And now this comes out 3 days. I know it popped up in July, but then the real concern I have, quite apart from, yes, I believe Brett Kavanaugh. I'll get a bumper sticker to that effect. If he denies it, I'm with Brett Kavanaugh because I know him. I don't know this person. She obviously has a record of professional accomplishment and so forth. But I want to know why at the 11th hour, 3 days before, then it pops up. There's a fairness to the process that I think is just profoundly concerning to any fair-minded person, as opposed to someone who just says, "Oh, I don't care. It could have come out after the vote. They should reconsider the vote." No. In the law. Hey, Bruce, no laughing.
This is serious.
I object to your objection to my laughing. Yes, go ahead.
You're going.
I agree with you.
I'm
I
making
agree
an
with
argument here.
I agree with you that so he was only 17 years old at the time, and he's led an exemplary life, and he should be on the court. I totally agree with you. I was just trying to look at the incident itself.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
I
well,
let you off the hook,
you.
Judge Starr.
Hey, we agree. He should be on the court.
Absolutely.
Yes, the book
I'm
is
with Ken Starr.
The book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Ken Starr, an honor to have you on, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you, Bruce.
And Ken Starr joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.